everyone, my name is Sophia. I am a grade 12 visual arts major in the Claude Arts program, and today I will be walking you through my process of creating my sit-down chair. We begin by reflecting on the chairs we usually sit on and searching for chairs we would like to sit on. And after inspiration started flowing, we designed original sculptures. In this project, like many others, my final design ended up being the first thing I visualized, the first thing that kind of popped into my head when the teacher first introduced the project. The initial idea is just continuously and subconsciously rendered at the back of my mind until it becomes the most developed. I tried to fight this urge by creating two maquettes, my sit-down chair and the reflection chair, but eventually gave in and chose the first. The sit-down chair, as the title suggests, is a subtle abstraction of the word sit and down. I found the connection between the phrase and the action or image assigned to the phrase intriguing. I also wanted to play with the physical form of the letters because I often remember words by their shapes as opposed to their spelling. I decided to break the word sit into S and it, and for the footrest and the chair respectively, to kind of contrast the mostly curved shape of the S with the straight right angles in the I and the T. In terms of the word down, when it's capitalized, it kind of forms a heavy rectangle barricaded by parallel lines and a D and the N on either side. So I translated this way into a carpet underneath the chair. I chose a limited color palette of selected primary and secondary colors of red, orange, blue, and green. The allocation of these colors are by their closeness to the body heat of the individual sitting in the chair. The chair is the warmest, so it's red, then the footrest is orange, and finally the colder carpet in the blue color, with small areas of green to reduce the complementing of the blue and the orange, so it's not as strong. While the maquettes could hold the shape in the poster paper, on a larger scale, I had to add a skeleton to support the hollows of the chair. I cut and hot glued pieces of Bristol board together and then wrapped the structure in poster paper. The chair, my chair, is made out of paper and glue, so it's lightweight and easy to transport. However, the biggest challenge I encountered was how to cleanly glue the edges of the paper together, especially in the smaller nooks. My design is relatively minimal, so any imperfections or creases would impact the dynamic and rhythm of the composition. I ended up just using trial and error to find the best way to cut board and paper. I also color matched some acrylic paint to the adjoining edges to kind of make it more neat. So, aside from feeling like a very skilled craftswoman from the medieval times, like working from candlelight, cutting and gluing this piece together late at night, this piece allowed me to continue to develop skills like patience and attention to detail. I enjoy the large amounts of planning involved in drawing the industrial design and calculating the dimensions and materials, and finally the technical drawing poster for the final display. These chairs have been through a lot, and so have we, but we both came out stronger, so I think that makes this project especially memorable. Either way, this project was enjoyable, even simply for the opportunity to make a chair that commands the viewer to sit down. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Bethany and today I will be sharing with you the ideas and the process of building my chair called Tangled. So I named my chair Tangled because it is very much inspired by nature and the irregular growth of the branches and shapes that it creates and its beauty. So a lot of my artwork uses natural materials such as wood, and this is because I grew up with a farm as well as a forest that my grandparents owned, and these are places that really meant a lot to me, where a lot of my memories were made. So I was exposed to nature and animals at a very young age, so I like to incorporate it into my artwork. And also, my family has always been a big support for me, and recently my grandparents died about 2 years ago, and it was a really hard time for me, but I didn't want it to be represented as a negative experience. I wanted to represent it positively through my artwork. So for my chair, it was very much inspired by nature. So that's why I used branches. And it was also inspired by another artist named Gavin Monroe, and he creates chairs from the tree itself. So he doesn't cut the tree or glue the pieces together. He shapes the tree as it grows and grafts it in order to create a chair shape. So I found that very interesting, and I decided to incorporate a similar idea in my chair where I wouldn't use any glue, and instead I would take smaller branches and wrap it around areas that needed more support, such as the legs. So once I chose my design, we then made maquettes. So my maquette I made out of small branches, and I stuck them into pieces of cardboard because originally I wanted there to be a white backing for the branches to sit and come out of, so that they would all come to a unified area to create the chair. But this was unrealistic because of how big the piece of wood would have to be. So I instead just let the branches hang off the side of the back of the chair. Next, to actually create the actual chair, I went to my farm and I collected a bunch of vines, and it took about 3 big bunches of vines to create the entire chair. And using these materials from my farm helped to add a personal element to my work, which is something I like to do because it helps me to connect to my work more, and it makes it more personal. And then after I got the vines, I took the thicker ones and twisted them into a sort of basic chair shape. And then I took thinner vines and I weaved them through the chair and twisted them around each other until I got a very firm and thick chair base. So once the chair was done, I then created a technical drawing of it, which includes measurements and close-ups for the viewer to have a closer look at. So I hope that you guys enjoyed my walkthrough of my chair and learning about the ideas behind it, and thank you very much for listening.
Hi everyone, I'm Steven, your MC from earlier. Let me introduce you to my chair design titled Puffer Chair. So, a bit of backstory. I initially came up with this design in February of 2020, which is a bit over a year ago. Back then, my mom dressed my dog up in a red puffer jacket during the winter, and I thought it was really cute. So since we were prompted to design a chair, I thought why not design something that I would buy for myself. Thus, I began prototyping a soft and comfortable chair that would embrace the users as they sat down. Here's an image of a 4-foot maquette that I made of the initial design. As you can see, the chair was a big tube with 4 holes that users could put their arms and legs through. Though, right as I finished this prototype, schools were closed due to COVID and I had to put this project on hold. It wasn't until an entire year later that I finally came back to this in Quad 3. However, now I had a new artistic vision for my work, and as a result, I adapted my chair design to match the theme of my graduating exhibit. And typically, as viewers, we would judge the work in an art gallery, but instead, I created paintings that were staring and judging the viewers back. So my exhibit creates this awkward and uncomfortable sensation as you make eye contact with the portraits. Thus, I changed the purpose of my chair from comfort to an uncomfortable and restricting one. This way, it will match the theme of a graduating exhibit. Hence, I added arms and legs into the design, ones that would immobilize and trap the viewers into a fixed position. Imagine an uncomfortable astronaut suit. That's basically what I was going for. As for the process and construction of my chair, despite its simple appearance, it actually took lots of patience. The chair is made from 2 king-size blankets and around 10 pillows worth of stuffing. Luckily, I was able to steal most of this material from the art department, so all I had to really do was spend 2 weeks learning different sewing techniques from my mom. With her help, I hand-sewed the entirety of the 4-foot tall chair. And despite of how tedious it was, I'm not mad about it because it was a nice mother-son bonding experience. And created a little demonstration for you guys in case you wanted to know how to make your own puffer chair. So pretend this is a large white blanket. I would fold it against itself and then sew 3 sides of it shut. So 1, 2, 3. This way you're left with a pocket or an opening that you could stuff. So after you stuff it, you then sew 2 more lines down. This way it creates that bumpy and puffer-like jacket look. And so after you do that, you just fold it against itself and then you create a cylinder. This cylinder, so let's pretend this is the body of the chair. You'll then create 4 more cylinders that are just like this, but smaller in size. That way you create the 2 arms and then 2 legs that are coming out of it. So after all 5 tubes are ready, I sewed it together. Finally, chicken wire and pool noodles were placed inside the tubes, giving a structure so it would stand up straight. Now, what you're left with is a puffer chair. In conclusion, I'm really happy with the result of my chair. I can definitely say that I learned a lot from this experience, because not only did I learn how to sew, but I also used a lot of creative problem solving to hand sew a 4-foot tall functional chair. I hope you guys enjoyed and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you. Bye.
Hey everybody, my name is Jeanette O, and today I will be walking you through my portfolio. So before I get started, a little bit about me. I am a grade 12 visual arts major, currently in my final year in the Claude program. I like to work with a lot of different mediums, and in my portfolio you'll see a lot of traditional work, three-dimensional sculptures, and some digital work as well. So let's get started. So in grade 9, there was a lot of technical studies and a lot of foundational skills built. So experimenting with light and shadow and different textures, shading and composition, and the watercolor studies where we got to experiment with colors and building layers on top of each other. So moving on to grade 10, again, a lot of observational skills were developed. This was our first drawing, which was the camera studies. And in grade 10, we really got to experiment with composition. Interestingly enough, a lot of the pieces we did in grade 10 were long horizontally. So it was really interesting to work with composing subject matter and placing them onto our surfaces. So here is an aquarium painting, which is also long horizontally. Here was a diptych that we created and worked together to sell at an auction. So that was a very rewarding experience. Again, more experimenting with light and shadow. This time some reflections and color was incorporated as well. And this is actually the cafeteria floor at our school. So this watercolor study is actually interesting because it's a little sneak peek of what I actually like to work with today in grade 12. So including science, biology, process, diagrams, all into art. I think it's an opening segue for that type of art that I do like to do today. So moving on to year 3. In grade 11, everything became a lot more open-ended. Instead of specific instructions for projects, we were given really open-ended prompts, and it was our job as artists to interpret it and translate it into our own work. So here is the first project we did in grade 11, which was collaborative. So I did this with Jenny, Bryce, and Sean, and other disciplines as well. And again, more three-dimensional sculptures. This one was made out of 100 wire clothes hangers. And our challenge was to translate something really mundane and boring and everyday to a work of art. In grade 11, there was a lot of experimentation with mark making, more abstraction, conceptual pieces. It wasn't so traditional anymore. We were able to kind of steer off and explore what we really wanted to. Here is a new expressionist painting, which again includes some butterflies and some butterfly studies. And again, it's incorporating some of that science into this painting. And here is just some of the process work and process shots of how this painting progressed. Near the end of grade 11, we started the illustration unit, which continued into grade 12, the beginning of grade 12. So in grade 12, we did the graphic novel illustration, which I think is my favorite piece that I've done in the program because I was able to have fun with the storytelling element and all of the light and shadows and graphic elements. And a lot of the work that I did produce was for my graduating exhibit. So this portrait piece, this independent project, there's my chair, and this text piece were all included in this final graduating exhibit. And although it's not an official part of my portfolio, I did want to show some of my sketchbook work. And being in the Claude Watson program, I've learned how important it is to generate process, generate ideas, and work first before moving on to the final creation. This way, I can familiarize myself with what I like working with, what I'm naturally attracted to as an artist, what kind of imagery appeals to me, and the opposite, what kind of imagery I don't want to use. So all of that experimentation is done in my sketchbook. So yeah, that concludes my portfolio presentation. If you have any more questions or you're curious about some of my blog posts or even my photography work, feel free to visit my website. And thank you so much for listening, and bye guys.
Hey guys, my name is Nick and I am a grade 12 visual arts major. Welcome to my visual arts portfolio website. As an art major, art has always been a passion of mine, especially drawing and painting, but I'm also into a variety of other things such as cooking, snowboarding, politics, and health sciences. So next I will show you my homepage, which is where you'll find all of my recent blog posts. So in my blog, I write about my art making and I go in depth into some of the concepts and meaning behind some of my work. So if you're interested in that, I would invite you back to my website and you can read a little bit more about my art making. So this is year 1, which is grade 9. And the projects in grade 9 were very technically focused. The pieces here are not particularly significant to me. I don't think that they are emblematic of me as an artist, but they do. I keep them on my website because I think they show my growth throughout the program and kind of the improvements I've made as an artist as a result of the Claude Watson program. Year 2 was a little bit of a better year for me. I started making pieces that I am actually really proud of to this day. This is one of them, the watercolor object studies. I think technically it's a really strong piece and shows my abilities really well, but it's also just really satisfying to look at and makes me really happy. So I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see some of the details in this piece. These are my aquarium pieces, so I did this one and this one as well. I'll zoom in again so you can see some of the details. This is my instrument studies piece, and this is also still one of my favorite pieces. I think technically it's really strong, but also visually the contrast between the dark shadows and the white paper is really visually appealing. And it took me a really, really long time. It's probably I probably spent the most amount of time on this piece out of any of my projects. Next I'll move on to year 3, which is grade 11. So grade 11 was a really interesting year because the projects became really a lot more open, and there were a lot less rules, and we were able to explore kind of our own styles and the kinds of art that we really want to be making. And so at first this was really difficult for me because I'm somebody who kind of likes rules and likes being told exactly what to do. But in grade 11, that wasn't the case, so I struggled with it a bit at first, but by the end of the year, I think I really embraced that, and it made me a better artist and more confident as an artist. So I'll show you some of my work. This is the documentation piece I did with pen on paper, and this is a part of my graduating exhibit, so if you'd like to take a look at that, it's on display in the waiting. This is my neo-expressionism. Here are the chair drawings I did in grade 11. Here's my line sculpture done with wire. And this is my landscape piece. Here's my abstracted landscape done on Mylar, and my 100 project. And this is a poster for the Pierre Burton Writing Contest I did. You might have seen it around school in 2020. I was commissioned to do it, and it was my first commissioned piece and also my first digital piece. So that was a really great experience and an opportunity I'm really grateful for. Let's go to year 4. This is grade 12, which was a challenging year, but I'm really proud of, in the end, some of the pieces I've made, even despite all the challenges. So this is my first I should say my second independent project, a part of my graduating exhibit. This is my text piece. Here is my finished chair. So this was, again, a continuation from grade 11. This is my independent project number 1, where I experimented with collage and layering that with paint. Here's my self-portrait reinterpreted, and my mass self-portrait, and finally my graphic novel illustration inspired by the COVID pandemic. That brings me to the end of my presentation for you today. I hope you've enjoyed looking at some of my work. If you're interested, I invite you back to my website and you can check out some of my personal or my photography work, and perhaps you'd like to read a little bit more about any of my projects, and you can do that by reading my blog post. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this event.
Hi, my name is Bethany, and I'm a grade 12 visual arts major in the Claude Arts program. So this is my website, and just a little about me. I use art as a form of communication to talk about topics that I'm passionate about, or just for fun. Things that I like drawing are like K-drama references or using song lyrics in my art. And some hobbies that I like to do apart from art is making videos, baking, sewing, and hanging out with friends. These are some of my pieces from grade 9. You can see here that there's not a lot of color. I didn't really know what type of artist I was, but I really found that I loved painting this watercolor Lego piece. It was really meticulous, and it took a lot of perfectionism like styles, and some charcoal pieces, and a still life painting. In grade 10, I started to develop more of a color theme. I play with like anime styles, and this is the beginning of my White Rabbit candy series. A portrait of a classmate, and back then I really liked primary colors. And these are some of my charcoal pieces. In grade 11, you can see more of a developed style. This is my hunt item sculpture made out of melted CDs, and my neo-expressionism painting. I really like this piece. I think it's still a really strong piece with all the bright colors, and it really reflected the childhood drawing that it was inspired by. And so I continued the theme in this 3D sculpture based off my childhood home. This is the wire sculpture. This was a continuation of my Inktober series, our collaborative sound sculpture. And I think this was also a really strong piece. I did this at the beginning of quarantine, and I just learned a lot about how I loved playing with line work. And so basically the theme was, in my Instagram account, I took 12 of the pieces and I stripped it down to its context, and I redrew them in an abstract illustrative style. In grade 12, I have some paintings from grade 12 painting. And this is where I start to show more of my digital art at school. And then this is also a continuation of my Inktober series. I think this White Rabbit chair was a really strong piece. I think this was the strongest piece that I did this year in school. It was very meticulous to blow up a tiny candy wrapper and depict it in like a life-size 3D sculpture. But it was a lot of fun painting all the Chinese lettering, and it really took a lot of perfectionism to do this. My traditional art and digital art styles are kind of different, but they both have like a clean, muted colors but bright colors at the same time style. Some of these pieces are for my university portfolio or just for fun. These are some drawing tests for my shared and illustration portfolio, and some of my sketchbook pages. And so on to my digital art. These are some of the recent pieces that I've done. I post them on my Instagram account, and I use my Instagram account as an incentive to be creating constantly and to push myself to just create something several times a week. And so some of these are depicting like dreams, character design. This was for Chinese New Year, or K-drama references or song lyrics. Here I play with a lot of concept art, fantasy, character design. I think that was a really fun series to work on. So as I go lower, these are some of my older pieces, but I'm still pretty happy with them. I think every new piece that I do, I can see how much I've developed in just one drawing. And so finally, we have some films that I've made of my art. They're speed paintings. It really makes me happy to make videos. I love editing and just showing the process of how a piece goes from a piece of paper to a fully blown sculpture. So this is the process of me painting my white rabbit chair. So in conclusion, I really think the Claude Watson Arts program helped me develop as an artist, and it really helped me grow into the type of creator that I wanted to be. And I think it was a really great community that we built together. It was really encouraging and a positive community. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a great day.
My name is Ariana, and this evening I will be presenting my graduating exhibit titled Familial Bonds. Prior to starting this collection of works, I was inspired by my bracelet making hobby, and I created a self-portrait that used these techniques. I enjoyed making that piece, so I decided to continue using this style in my graduating exhibit. Because bracelet making was partly inspired by my family, I decided to make my graduating exhibit revolve around my theme of family. My family has always been a consistent source of inspiration. The title Familial Bonds references the strong connections between my family and myself. And that is shown by using the embroidery floss that came from my great-grandmother. In this exhibit, I depict significant objects, photos, and memories that represent my family's influence on me. The first piece in Familial Bonds is the self-portrait that I created prior to this whole body of work, and it's titled Unwind. This piece shows a picture of me looking stressed, but the bottom looks like it's unwinding, which represents how bracelet making and my parents helped me to relieve stress. The second piece is titled Apple Photography, and it represents how I became interested in photography. My uncle took many amazing photographs, and I wanted to be able to do the same, especially on vacations. I wanted to be able to look back and not only reminisce in the memories, but also appreciate the art. The third piece is titled Candy Parade, and it represents the support from my grandparents. This actually depicts one of my earliest memories with them, which was at a fair. There was a parade, and the members of the parade threw candy for the kids. So my piece depicts a child picking up candy. At this fair, I also got my face painted, which was featured in a local newspaper, and I used the colors from the snake that was painted on my nose, and I put those into my piece. I also used satin thread for the candies to represent the materials of the wrappers. The fourth piece, titled Cherry Buttons, is about my bracelet making hobby, and it's probably the most crucial piece in this exhibit because it depicts how I got into bracelet making in the first place. When I was younger, I did bracelet making on and off, and a couple of bracelets that inspired me to do bracelet making came from my aunt and my cousin. I took the cherry fasten from the bracelet that my aunt made, and I used the cherry as the main imagery in my piece. I also used satin embroidery floss for the cherries to represent the translucency of the cherry fasten that came from my aunt. The last piece is titled Pet Personalities, and it was actually a separate piece that I created simultaneously with this graduating exhibit, and I decided to include it because it fits with my theme of family. Pets are an important part of my family as they provide comfort and companionship.
When pets are remembered or described, there's usually a specific characteristic or personality trait about the pet that becomes their identity in our memories. So to explore this idea, I've stamped the significant words of these characteristics on pet ID tags. I also knotted chains to represent the collars pet ID tags are usually attached to, and as well as to display the ID tags. The chain also fits in with the style of my graduating exhibit. Overall, working on this project helped me to reflect on my memories with my family and acknowledge their influence on me. Without doing this project, I don't think I would have realized how much they have impacted my art and my life. I really enjoyed creating what would normally be called a craft and turning it into an art piece. Working with the relatively large scale of work helped me to develop my skills in bracelet making, and I look forward to creating more work using this style. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
If I was walking in a cold and empty hallway and locked eyes with a bizarre creature, I would be terrified. Not only for my safety, but out of utter confusion. Everything that had been taught to be impossible, sights that I knew for sure lived only in fairy tales, beliefs I had locked in place, submerged in my brain as undeniable truth, they would become nothing. Though I have not yet literally encountered any monsters roaming in my apartment's stairwell, my thought processes and preconceptions have been shattered a multitude of times over the past couple years. As a dumb toddler, I was told that my nose was small. My mother giggled when I made mistakes and strangers found me adorable. I was embraced when I cried. When I drew squiggly lines and misshapen mermaids, I was met with an uproar of love and praise. Before I knew it, I was older and perceived as a real person living amongst other real people. The accuracy of my portraits started to matter. Mistakes were no longer cute, just embarrassing. Everything became a competition. I was not the best artist in the world. Mom fell sick. My nose wasn't even small. By mid-grade 10, I started to hate drawing. I had no direction, no motivation to pursue anything. Over this quarantine, I remembered why I'd ever started creating images. It was not for the external validation, no, it was the love that sparked when I immersed in picture books. Mikhail Oslo's animations, streetlights running past the car window. I realized I want to explore this beauty forever. Citizens of Praxidike, my recent body of work, visualizes these internal conflicts as interactions with aliens. Concepts that I struggle to digest are reimagined as otherworldly souls that are just as confused by my existence as I am by theirs. Perhaps the bizarre creature in the hallway is not a threat at all. Perhaps I am the bizarre creature. With my reignited passion for image making and continuous experimentation with technique, my work is progressing into a new realm. I hope to develop my world through even larger surfaces and dive deeper into my creative potential, and possibly move into digital mediums and maybe more into sound or music. Looking forward to that.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan, and today I'll be taking you through my graduating exhibit, Welcome Stranger. So Welcome Stranger is the culmination of my two independent projects, The Crowd and Untitled Pages. I think the difference between the acrylic painting and graphic design of the two pieces embody my range as an artist, because over these 4 years I've worked with so many different mediums, from charcoal to acrylic painting to watercolor to wires to coffee cups to digital illustration and now graphic design. I'm taking these traditional techniques that I'm learning in the visual arts program and then employing them on my own time in extracurriculars such as the yearbook committee or even as media masters on different clubs and councils. I wanted to explore the concept of defamiliarization, that is, taking something familiar and then making it unfamiliar. By doing so, viewers are encouraged to view things from different perspectives, and this can be done with my exhibit not just physically but also figuratively. When I began working on my graduating exhibit, I had two different concepts I wanted to explore, and in today's presentation, I will be going over one of them. But before I do that, I just want to take you quickly through the process of everything. So as you probably know, the figures in the crowd are very, very big. And I had to do most of this project in my own home, so I had a lot of trouble finding an effective way of painting them. So first I taped them to the wall and ceiling so I could understand how big they would be. But this became an issue when paint began to drip and then I got tired of standing on a chair. So then I decided I could just lay them on the floor and kneel next to them. Now, untitled pages did not need as much preparation because it's primarily an installation piece. So really all I had to do was rip the hundreds of pages out from the yearbook. If I'm being honest, it did hurt a bit because I was destroying the work that the team and I had put so much work into, but it had to be done for the sake of art. Now moving on to the biggest part of my exhibit's process, which is displaying everything. Because my exhibit has such a heavy focus on space, it had to be displayed in a very specific place in Wave Gallery, that is, the beginning. And this is because of the lower ceiling. The Wave Gallery actually shifts into a higher ceiling the further back you go, and I needed that lower ceiling so the figures could create that looming effect that I wanted it, so it could reach from the floor all the way to the ceiling. It took about 2 classes to fully display both pieces because there was just so much to do. With the help of my classmates, everything was displayed on time, so thank you everyone. I think the biggest challenge I faced as a whole was the abundance of freedom, which sounds a bit weird, but having mainly focused on paintings and drawings my entire life, I was really used to having clear borders. But both my pieces in the graduating exhibit could easily be manipulated to fit any space. The size and shape were completely up to me, whereas in paintings and drawings, I had to adapt to the surface that was given to me. My strokes could not go beyond the frame. But here, I was no longer limited by the borders of my canvas, but by the limitations of my own skills. But what is my exhibit trying to say? Well, the figures in the crowd are not representational, but rather a metaphor for the realities of adulthood. While my past works often reflect the journey of growing up, the crowd is the confrontation at the end of that journey. The gazes of others begin to affect us more and more. First impressions could determine what we do in the future, and pressure from standards set by others could dictate whether or not we continue doing it. This piece represents the process of leaving innocence behind to face the realities of the world. As we move towards adulthood, we must ask ourselves if we are ready, as soon enough it will be our turn to walk through the crowd. The yearbook pages and untitled pages is the continuation of this message. It symbolizes the difficult decisions we must make as adults. The pages entice viewers to step on them to get across, but under the judgment of the figures on the wall. It challenges the viewer if they are willing to step on the hard work of the yearbook committee to get where they need to be. Similarly, in the real world, we are often presented with great opportunities that require us to step on others. Whether it be the exploitation of underpaid workers or the destruction of nature, we must think twice about our actions. Or maybe we don't. Because we all have places to be, after all. Whether we like it or not, it's the reality of our world. But many of us are not at that stage yet. We still have quite a bit of time to figure everything out, to prepare ourselves. The ultimate message I want my piece to deliver is how despite the personal struggles we deal with individually each day, we are never alone in our battles. Our experiences may be personal, but by connecting and sharing them with each other, we can gain a deeper understanding of the world and ourselves. This project marks not the end of my artistic journey at Haig, but the start of a new chapter in my life as I walk a path towards an unwritten future. I invite you to join me on my journey, and so, welcome, stranger.